My name's Steve Windress. I'm an independent consultant based in the Namoi Valley. It was a really tough time actually. At that time in the industry we had some major resistance problems with a particular pest called Heliothis or Helicobacter armigera, and resistance levels are running very high at that time, around about 80% or higher. All the insecticides we used at that time had a resistance problem in them, and we started doing things like mixing different products together. At the end we were mixing sort of 4 and 5 insecticides together to try and get a result to control this pest, and we were struggling, really struggling. So the industry came up with a strategy called an insect resistant management strategy, which was designed by some pretty intelligent guys at the research station at Namoi Valley, and that was paramount to our succeeding, I suppose, or continuing on with the industry. And that worked very well. So the longevity of those products were sort of still there. But during that time, we had continual failures. We were spraying, not excessively, but needy. We were checking the crops 3 times a week. We were getting spray failure after spray failure. We were continually, spraying sometimes every 3 days. And it was a difficult time for growers. The stress was through the roof. I'd bring the stress home to my family. It was pretty bad, like in real terms. Sharon actually worked with me. We couldn't work together. We'd argue all the time. She'd come out with a handful of grubs and I'd just go, just expletives, and because you'd spent a lot of money on that crop, and the bug checkers would come out, we call it, they come out with a handful of grubs, and I knew that there was grubs in there, but I didn't want to see them because I knew I then had to go and see the grower and say we have to spray that. And it was just a really, really sort of, terrible time. And if the industry if we hadn't developed GM cotton, I would not have stayed in it. So I suppose the introduction of BT cotton initially, we saw as a real, game changer for us, to be very honest. Prior to BT, I suppose we questioned our longevity in the industry, but when BT came along, we could see, how this product could perform, how we could actually incorporate some of our beneficial insects to assist us in controlling our problem pests in cotton. So the initial gene that came out was InGuard, which was just a single gene BT cotton, and it had its problems. Under stress, it didn't perform very well. So we still had to assist it with conventional insecticides, and we successfully got through, and things sort of started to tick over a lot better. We then, probably 5 or 6 years later, saw the introduction of BioGuard 2, and that was a game changer for us. That's when we could all sleep a bit better at night, and these products, compared to conventional insecticides, work 24 hours a day. Whereas insecticides we had issues with sunlight, all these sorts of things with degradation, but BTs never stopped working. So finally we had something that we were getting ahead with. Yield started to increase, profitability started to increase, and the assistance, as I said, with beneficial insects became paramount to managing the pests in the crop. So it's been a great road since the introduction of BTs. We've probably reduced there is some numbers, I can't recall exactly, but it's 85%, something like that of insecticide reduction in the industry, which for me, is a great thing, and for the industry it's even better. And I see that, we used to be frowned upon as an industry with the quantities of products we used, the way we used them, drift over townships and all sorts of things, with inversions, but, we've now cleaned ourselves up a lot because of the introduction of BT, or GM modified crops fundamentally, and that's been a big winner for us. So we can hold our head pretty high now, and we're a lot cleaner than what we were, that's for sure. It's allowed us to control that major pest that we have, and with the adoption of GM crops or GM technology, we've had new varieties come to the marketplace, and those new varieties have got better fibre traits, better yield, and put us in a position in the world that's probably the envy of the world, really, in terms of yield and quality. The last 30 years in the industry, we've seen the industry develop and expand quite dramatically. It's been a great change. It's been a real pleasure to see and use these particular products we see in the industry. The industry is expanded a lot. There's been a lot more confidence in the industry, and a lot more people looking to come into the industry and be growers and whatnot. So it has been a a really, really good time. And I think the future is very, very good too. You know, we're looking down the track of some very good technology coming, and I see that the industry is in a good position and the envy of a lot of other agricultural sectors, I believe.